Hello friends, Charlie Murphy here. Thank you for choosing my video. It's been a while since I've posted something and people have been asking for new content in the comments, so I decided to post something a little bit different, a little bit special for y'all today. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to take a more loose aggressive strategy and apply it to some sort of fishy low stakes games. This will be applicable for people that play live low stakes games, 1-2, 1-3. If they're playing lower stakes games online, up to 50-cent dollar or maybe $1, $2, or if you happen to be in a higher stakes game where there's a lot of recreational players doing silly things, this will show you how you can maybe play more hands, play a strategy that's a bit more loose, active, aggressive, and more fun, and possibly more profitable as well if you can play some of these hands well. We'll start by doing a little bit of the theory behind this approach, and then we'll jump into a short session video after that. To start, what we're taking a look at here is we are looking at a preflop sim in simple preflop, showing optimal RFI ranges, 3-bet ranges, things like that for each particular node in the game tree preflop. What I want to talk about first is how I think people sort of misunderstand how solvers come to these ranges. What we're looking at right here is a under-the-gun opening range in a 6-max game, so first to act with 3 more players plus 2 more blinds left behind you. Solver opens 17-18%, roughly 17.86% particular solve. But Solver mixes a lot of combos around the fringes. A lot of hands are opened all the time, a lot of hands are open none of the time, and you've got a handful of these cards that are sort of in the middle, that Solver opens some of the time, but not others. The reason why it does that is Solver in an environment against, pre-flop here in a 6-max game, 5 other solvers, they're all playing perfectly, they all know each other's strategy, trying to exploit each other, eventually reach an equilibrium or balance state. And so what Solver's going to do, knowing that if everyone else plays perfectly against its own strategy, it's going to open all the hands that are profitable all the time. So Ace Jack Plus is showing it's slightly profitable, 0.04 big blind hand. Ace is, of course, the most profitable hand, 9 big blind. Gun. Some of these trashy, raggy hands are clear losers. 10-5 offsuit is minus 0.2. So Solver is going to always open the hands that it finds to be profitable. It's going to never open the hands that it finds to be unprofitable. But then you have all these hands right here on the cusp. They're kind of fringy opens, like Ace-10 offsuit, King-10 offsuit, Queen-10 offsuit. Solver views those as basically neutral, 0.0 EV. So Solver is essentially indifferent to playing those hands. It neither adds nor takes away value from its strategy. So in that strategy, it plays Ace-10 part of the time, but not all the time. Same thing with King-10, King-Jack offsuit, pocket 5s, pocket 4s from under the gun. But theory here is that Solver v Solver is going to be a pretty tough lineup to be in. You're playing these fishy low-stakes game with guys that are limping pre-flop, calling too much, they're not aggressive enough, they don't re-raise you. I'm never going to be anywhere as good as Solver, and I doubt pretty much anybody watching this video will ever play quite as well as Solver. However, the difference between me and Solver is not nearly as big as the difference between the other players I'm playing against in these fishy low-stakes games I'm talking about. So if Solver can make pocket 5s break even against a table full of other optimal players, I can take all these break even, make them profitable, a table full of 100 no limit fish on ignition or lives low. So what I'm going to do for this video is I'm going to take all these hands that are kind of neutral. Solver thinks they should be played part of the time, they're indifferent, they're break even, win anything or lose anything. And I'm going to go ahead and take these all to be pure opens. I'm just going to play these 100% of the time. I'm not going to try to mix. I'm not going to say King-10 should be played a sliver of the time, but mostly folded. I'm not going to say I mostly play Ace-10, but not entirely. I'm just going to go ahead and play all these hands that are break even or better and play them all the time. So a Solver under the gun open range is usually going to be something like 17-18%. But if I take these hands that are kind of on the cusp, roughly break even, and just decide to play them all the time, I'm going to boost my frequency of opening there up from something like 18% to more like 24%. I'm getting 23.68 this particular setup right here. On the idea, once again, that, I'd rather be playing these hands against these poor players because Solver can only break even against Solver, but I can find a way to take these marginal hands and make them profitable if I play post-flop much better against the fish. The other thing is these guys are not 3-betting you enough. A lot of times a hand like pocket 4s or King-10, you get 3-bet, you have to just go ahead and fold it. Well, if they're not three-raising enough, I can open some more of these hands because they're not punishing me, making me raise and then fold against the three-bet and surrendering my open. I'm either going to get through more often than I should and pick up the blinds at a profit, or I'm going to get post-flop where I can play at least as well as solver can, if not better, considering my opponents are much weaker. I'm going to take a similar theory along with three bets here. So an under-the-gun open range is roughly 18%. And then the next position, the hijack, it's three betting, for one size or another, three betting 3x, it's going about 2.74%. For 3.5x, it's going about 4.21%. Taking a look at this here, EV of these hands, a lot of these hands are going to be neutral. Like three betting pocket sixes in that spot, and solver v solver is break even. It's not a hand that you would play a whole lot necessarily if you're trying to mimic solver frequencies because it doesn't play it all that often. It pretty much never three bets pocket sixes. It looks like it calls a little bit and mostly folds it. But it's telling me that solver v solver, a lot of these hands are break even in that environment. So once again, if I can pick up more folds or play better post flop against these guys, I'm going to play more of these hands. And you go from a three bet spot there, hijack versus under the gun, you three betting in solver world something like 2.74 and 4.21. That's three betting about 7%. If I do a middle position 3-bet against the 2.5x under the gun open, there's about 13 to 14% of hands if I take all these sort of marginal break-even ones and play them all the time. The way this works is that your frequencies are going to start to get it a whack. When I've been playing this strategy, my pre-flop stats were something like 32, 27, 12, or 13% 3-bet, which obviously is on the aggressive side. If I'm playing more around solver frequencies, I'm more something like 20. 10% 3-bet. So your frequencies do increase pretty dramatically by playing this way. However, anonymous games on Ignition or people in a live low-stake game barely paying attention over small sample sizes is how long can these samples really be for a single session at a live table or an Ignition table where you're anonymous. People aren't going to catch on for sure that your frequencies are that at a whack. They might get some idea that you're aggressive, but at the same point in time, you're not really showing up with unreasonable hands. It's not like I'm going to get the showdown and I open 7-3 offsuit under the gun. They're going to see I open pocket fours. Maybe that's a little on the loose side, but not completely unreasonable. Maybe I get there with king 10. Not completely unreasonable, a little on the loose side, but a reasonable hand to show up with. So you're not going to tip people off that you're playing a bunch of garbage because you're not. You're playing a bunch of hands that are sort of on the fringes, that are sort of loosely profitable, kind of right on the cusp, and just playing them more often. It's going to be fairly hard to detect, and it's going to give you chances to get in there and play a lot more pots against players. If you're in the right games, you're playing more pots against weak players, which is where most of my profit comes from. With that, we're going to shut it down, take a brief break, and we'll be back momentarily with a short session showing some of this strategy in action so you see how it can actually work. Is a lot of conventional wisdom in poker circles I just downright disagree with. The one I'm talking about today, most specifically, is that against players that are too loose and fishy, you have to just wait for hands and sort of play even tighter. And I couldn't disagree more. I want to get in there and play more hands against these guys. Give them some action. Every once in a while, they'll stack me. They'll beat me because I'm in there giving them action. But I'm going to be on the right side of that more often than I'm not. And I want to be the one that plays the hands against the recreational players and the absolute whales before they dump their money to somebody else. So with that all in mind, I'll be back in just a moment to show you how this strategy works in action. Hello friends, Charlie Murphy here. Welcome back. We've got the games up and running here, so we're going to experiment with some loose aggressive strategy here and some weaker low stakes 50-cent $100 no limit buy-in game. Table 3, I open King Jack from the cutoff. A recreational player calls and leads into a little over half pot on Queen 10-3. I of course continue with my open and a straight draw. Now that he has actually gone ahead and checked the turn, I'm going to start barreling here. I do have removal to the nuts, Jack 10 being black with King Jack in my hand. He sized up a bit on the flop, so while I am going to overbet, I'm not going to bet quite as big to sort of manipulate the stack pot ratio on the river to a level I would like. He check calls the overbet. River is a board pairing card, the 3. I obviously want to bluff my busted draw here. If there's merit in overbetting against the rec, or should I just bet smaller here? Table 4, going to open ace-10 under the gun. Now he leads into me for half pot. I don't really think bluff raising recreational players when they take donk line good idea, especially in a larger pot. I'm going to go ahead and let this one go. Table 4, recreational player calls out of the big blind. I get a low board, 872 rainbow. I'm going to be splitting my range on these low boards and using a bit larger size, more like half pot. A hand like ace is probably a good one to check back. I don't want to blow him off weaker aces or tens, and I can show down ace 10 high good a reasonable amount of the time. Table 3, got a limper under the gun. I will isolate from middle position with pocket tens. I believe that's completely standard. This guy goes ahead and limp jams for 30 blinds. So let's see here. Table 2, now that he goes ahead and checks to me again on the ace, I'm going to go ahead and start betting half pot in that check line. Got to call 30 into 74. He could be doing this with smaller pairs or 2 overcards. I'm not that worried about being in bad shape here. I'm going to go ahead and reshift to isolate. Against ace-queen, so we're flipping. Good river for me over there on table 4, giving me top 2 on the aces and ace-10 run out. I think this is probably a good spot to overbet, as I think he might get too sticky with weak 1 pair aces, and he could also have hands like 10-8, 10-7, 7-8. So I'm going to go ahead and use the overbet size. Go about 2x here against the rec. Squeeze scenario on table 2, and open from middle position, calls from the cutoff, who's apparently a rec player, and then the button as well. I need to be a bit tighter with how I both squeeze and how I continue for a call out of the big blind here. It's the middle position, 2.5x open. King 10 is kind of on the cusp of hands I should be playing. I do have this guy, I'm not 100% sure if he's a rec either. I'm going to go ahead and make a fold on the slightly tighter side. Table 4, rec limps in. I will check behind my big blind with 7-6 offsuit. ISO those blind on blind limps pretty aggressively, but maybe not as weak. Now he leads into me for the pot, just over pot on 9-7-5. I am going to float once with this gut shot here. Probably fold to any substantial aggression on the turn. Unless I improve, of course. If he slows down on the ace, I think I'm going to start bluffing here. He bets small. He bets a blocker type size. I am going to continue against that small size. River the straight, a flush closing turn card. Or flush closing river card, rather, but I have the straight. I'm really not that worried. I was also planning to bluff against a check or a small river bet. I think I'm going to just go ahead and raise anyway, of course, here. Now it's for value. I think he's going to fold a lot on that flush closer with the ace turn over card. Maybe he's frustrated with me. A lot of times they're just telling me to give up the pot when they do. At least from a rec. Regs defend their block bets versus raise a bit better. Recs you can just punish. Table 1, get a 2.5x open from the cutoff. Or from middle position, rather. I'm in the cutoff with pocket 5s. Maybe a little too loose to 3-bet, so I'm going to let this one go. It's pretty close. Against a fish, I might go ahead and do it just to put a few extra hands against weak players. Let me get away with all kinds. Table 2, get a recreational player limps and then a isolation raise. I'm not quite sure how to approach these yet. I mostly treat them kind of like squeeze scenarios where I'm going to be better than just regular 3-bet. Not really quite as, or not as tight rather as a cold 4-bet. I think ace 6 would be. Queen 6 would be a little bit too loose to start opening, even with a loose. So to pitch that too. Losing a couple of wrecks here on the lower tables. I'm going to shuffle up table 3 and look for a new one. Table 3, going to open 6s from middle position. Got an ISO, or got a limp and an ISO. I'm in the big blind with ace-4 suited. I'm going to go ahead and re-steal this one. Treat it kind of like I would do in a squeeze spot, and I'm going to re-pop here with a couple of suited wheel aces like ace-5, ace-4. Hit the call, get a queen, queen 3 two-tone board. Going to go ahead and put in a small range bet. Hit 3-bet out of the big blind, a 4.5x. Going to be defending my pocket pairs against the 3-bet, so I'll call and take a flop with my 6s. Table 1, my continuation bet gets raised large. I'm going to go ahead and fold none. 4. I've got a queen, I'm of course going with it. I'm not really sure where I draw the line. Get a 1/3 bet over here on table 3. Going to go ahead and continue with my set of 6s. Interesting turn card, boats me up and also closes the flush. And he goes ahead and checks the turn. I think I want to continue getting some money in here. Well, actually, this one is so well protected, I can probably check it back and maybe sort of induce bluffs. Obviously, a hand this strong, you can do no wrong as long as you fold. I think I'm going to be better served to kind of bet half pot and try to get him to come along with pocket pairs that have a diamond that are drawing pretty close to dead, really drawing to 2 outs, and their diamond's no good. Ace-X with the diamond's going to come along as well. Table 1 got a limper. I'll complete my small blind with 6-7 suited. We'll check on the flop. Got about a pot-sized bet left on the river. I've got a full house. Going to go ahead and move him all in. Take it down with the river barrel. Up on table 1, I've got an opportunity to open 7-6 on the button. This is a slightly negative play here. Solver v. Solver. This guy's been reasonably aggressive, which hurts me if he 3-bets, but I do have a loose passive fish in the small blind, which is going to mean they're probably not 3-betting enough as a whole. Plus, I can play another pot post-flop with a fish who may call. So I'm going to go ahead and open that one. By the time I'm done yapping about it, I've already taken the pot down, but the rationale behind why I'm opening as loose as I am there. Expected wreck. He's full stack, but he's limping under the gun. I'm going to go ahead and assume recreational player until I have some reason to believe otherwise. Some regs will do some weird limp re-raising type strategy with tight ranges. The guys that are recreational players that are clicking buttons without a real in-depth, I'm going to assume that's the case. Before, got a recreational player limping under the gun. I'm going to go ahead and isolate with ace-king from middle position. He limp calls. Dream flop for my ace-king. Ace-7 rainbow. Checks to me. I'm going to go ahead and put in a small range bet there. Looking to keep barreling here. comes along. Table 1, opening queens from middle position. Table 4, opening ace-jack from under the gun. Both very standard, not even remotely out of. Recreational player min raises from 2.5 to 4. I'm, of course, coming along with every possible hand. I don't see much reason to 4, but I think I just want to call and play post-flop. Check to him on the raggy low board, 10-6-4 rainbow. He bets 2/3. I can go ahead and fold ace-jack to that. Against smaller bets, I might float with my overcards, backdoor Broadway draw. I think it's okay. I'm making so much money by seeing the flop so cheaply there with ace-jack against assume is a pretty ridiculous looking it back as a 3-bet. I'm not that worried about floating aggressively on the flop when he has pretty decent sizes. Table 4, recreational player limps blind on blind. I'll take my free flop with 6-3 offsuit. Table 1, rec limps the button. Small blind pops that up. I'm going to fold my Jack-8. Got nothing but some very weak backdoor draws. When the small blind pots into me on table 4, I'll just go ahead and fold my 6 high. Table 2, 2.5x open from the cutoff. I'm not going to 3-bet king 4 suited. That's 2 out of line for my. Trying to get a solid-looking 4th table back up. Fuck. You there, Richie? Yeah, I can hear you. This was not planned, but we got a very special guest here, my good friend Richie. Some of you may know him as Returnthebomb from streaming on Twitch. Decided to jump in and watch the session for a little while. Let me make sure I can have his audio recorded. Richie, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. I'm pretty sure you should be audible on here now. I turned on the desktop audio recording as well. Go ahead and say hello if you'd like. I just to give you a brief introduction, but go ahead and introduce yourself as well, please.
Oh, no, I think you did fine. I am curious because I can't see who else is in the call.
Oh, no one's in the call. I was only streaming to you if you wanted to watch and decided to record for YouTube here when I didn't hear from you right away. But all good.
Understood. I
Now,
misunderstood. Okay,
up
cool.
here on table 2, we've got a 2.5x open from under the gun. I'm in the cutoff with ace queen, so they're going to be going after these guys aggressively here and 3-betting all my suited broadways. We'll go ahead and put in the re-raise now. Seems like a reg type player using that sizing. Calls and checks to me on ace queen 5 rainbow. I'm going to go ahead and put in a small range bet on a board like this. Mostly be checking back turns unless I find a third queen, in which case we're going to start going for a big value. But I pick it up on contested instead, which never really going to have much of a problem with that. All right, the new fourth table, table 3, has a couple of 30 blind stacks in there. That should be pretty promising. I'm opening looser, but not opening as loose as 7-4 suited under the gun over there on table 1. Although the presence of all these recreational players starts making anything look somewhat worthwhile to me. Maybe not that out of line, of course, but
Give it a couple more months and maybe you'll be there, huh?
yeah,
Keep
exactly.
opening it up.
If maybe if I start playing in weak enough games and really get my skill up there, I can just open anything and there's no consequence. But I think they may be taking it a bit too far. But there's a section at the start of this video that where I cut it before I jump into the games, kind of going over the looser approach and the rationale behind it. And a solver open frequency from under the gun is going to be somewhere in that 17-18% range. But if you start looking at all the hands that are mixed frequencies because they're more or less break even, solver v solver, if you take all of those to pure opens, you're already up to something like 24%, and that's still nowhere near as loose as 7-4 suited. So if you're going to start opening hands like that under the gun, you're probably playing 35 to 40% of hands under the gun, and that's not just out of line. That's downright wacky. So I don't think I'd recommend getting that loose. But hey, if you're good enough to do it, more power to you. Table 1 got a 3x open from a very tight passive recreational player under the gun. Given that he's so tight, so passive, and opening for a 3x size from a tight formation, I am not going to defend Queen 10 here. I think that's a bit too loose against that size, against a more appropriate range. You can make up some EV post flop against a recreational player, but I'm not sure I make up enough to start playing some of the dominated offsuit broadways. Intent to fold that one and go on to the next.
Yeah, I'm always a little conflicted in that spot just because they are punting so hard post. And that hand has to be pretty close to defending, right? I mean, not for 3x, but
yeah, against a smaller open, I think I might do it. Now, the 3x, I think I'll let it go. We got a middle position limp. I'm going to go ahead and isolate from the cutoff with Queen 6 suited. This is definitely on the loose side. This is towards the bottom of an open range without a limper, but assuming that these guys are not going to 3-bet my ISOs nearly enough because they almost never do. And I'm assuming the rec is either going to fold too much or play poorly post-flop. Now, as soon as I say that, I go ahead and get popped back up by a guy who seems to be a bit on the short side. I'm going to go ahead and make an easy fold with Queen 6. Recreational player opens 3x. My first instinct is to go ahead and 3-bet him on the button with pocket 8s. Against a smaller size, because he's also been so tight passive, 54-8 over the first couple orbits, I think I might call. Against the 3x size, I'm really not going to talk myself into too many calls. I'm just going to 3-bet and see if he wants to get involved. But if you are going to start incorporating calls on the button, this is the exact kind of hand that does it real well. Pretty obvious. Perhaps it bears repeating all the same. He calls and leads into me small, about a third on King 10-4 two-tone. I would have put in a small range bet on that board. I'm not going to fold a pair for that small size, but I'm really not going to assume this hand has too much going for it until I go ahead and bink that dream card, the 8 of spades, giving me trips without closing the flush. So now we're looking to play a big pot here. He goes ahead and he bets 10. I'm not that worried about him donking with draws. He obviously can have some, but I just don't want to blow him off his total air balls or weak pairs. So I'm going to go ahead and just keep calling. Very bad rivers, I may not go for stacks. I may look to play a smaller pot, but the nice blanky ones or fill-up rivers, I'm of course going to try to get all of them. Interesting river. It does complete the Broadway straight if he was doing this with Queen 10. It may also scare him off some of his nonsensical pairs. He goes and bets 10 into 47. It's about a pot size bet left behind. If he's really doing that with somehow having a better set, kings, tens, aces, or if he's doing that with the Broadway straight after getting there, congratulations, he outplayed me, he tricked me. But I just think I can get called down by enough hands that aren't those combos that it really justifies putting the set in. I don't think it's controversy. So I'm going to go ahead and chip the rest in for about a pot size river raise. He calls off, pick up a stack. I'm happy with that.
Another thing I thought was interesting about that hand, looking at some of the reports that I've seen from you,
Yeah.
it seems like when fish donk for a small size, they go for 3 streets like a lot more often than if they were to donk for a big size. So I like kind of calling that turn even more based on just the sizing band he was in.
Yeah, and I just checked. He had king queen offsuit, so he was donking with a pretty decent top pair. He's in bad shape against me having ace king, but really doing pretty nice against just about anything else. I'd love to say he's, considering that he blocks the queen, or he blocks queen jack, and that's why he called down. I doubt he's thinking about it in that depth. I think this just was the hand he was calling and not folding. If I raise him on the turn there, I may scare him away. He may just, actually, no, the ace wasn't there yet. He's not going at that point, but it's not about keeping king 10 in. It's not about keeping the top pairs that are pretty strong. It's about letting him do that with nonsensical 10x hands that shouldn't be doing that in the first place.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I'm out of position, but I think I like betting better than checking with ace 10 high here on this paired board. I can pick up quite a few folds, not from his pocket pairs, but he's going to find a way to get a street of value off me at some point anyway. I'm going to open 10-9 from middle position up there on table 2. Table 4, just going to go ahead and start checking my ace 10 high now. Probably mostly folding, especially against that good size up right there where he could even be full with 7s full or 5s full. I think his range is going to be more pocket pair heavy given that he called pre-flop, especially not even on the button, and now he's playing that way on a paired board. So I think it's going to be fold my ace. Draw. Table 2, I get called by the big blind. Going to go ahead and range bet small on king, queen, 3 rainbow. I do have the gut shot to the second nuts looking for that jack, so I'll probably keep barreling pretty aggressively here. Going to like that hand better in the barrel line than the check back line. But I pick it up on a wreck over here. Table 3, so we'll tag him. Only one wreck on table 4, but I've got the dream on him, so we'll keep that. He limps blind on blind. I check in jack 7. He checks on ace 5-3. I'm just going to go ahead and stab at it for the minimum. Oh, a second wreck over here on table 3. Go ahead and tag him as he limps under the gun and isolate from the cutoff with ace 4 suited. Table 4, he check calls. I'm really never folding them off an ace, at least not unless I go completely crazy, and even not then. I'd rather just check back my jack, keep that pot smaller, get towards showdown, maybe induce a bluff or underrip my hand to get some value. He sizes up for pot. I don't love that, but I'm not in the business of not giving fish action, and I'm not in the business of folding to them, so I'm going to go ahead and call this down, expecting I'm probably beat quite a bit, but I'm not folding blind on blind. He was against the 5 there. Not sure why he would bet that for that size, but I'm not going to overthink it too much and just call. Table 1, Rec limps the button. I'm going to go ahead and pop him up out of my big blind with king queen. Sizing up out of position from these ISOs about 150% of pot. Hit a 10-10-6 two-tone board. Going to go ahead and continuation bet this. Given that it's an ISO pot, I treat it more like kind of a 3-bet pot. Even on these paired boards that are low, I will use a half pot size on the low boards, paired or not, and a 3-bet pot will do it when ISO position. So I'll go ahead and stab for half pot here. Can fold him off a lot of nonsense, but when he goes and clicks it back, I think I'm going to not get involved. If I had even a single heart, I might come along here just for a little bit more equity. With 2 overcards but no heart, I'm going to go ahead and fold. It is such a good price that I'm tempted, but I think I'll let this one go. Probably on the cusp. I think a solver might come along, but I just don't think the Recs are going to be raising nearly as weak a range there as maybe you should against my range bet. And which also means I'm going to have a tougher time getting him to fold out later. I don't think he's going to check back the turn often enough. don't think I'm going to be able to get him to fold out the river often enough, even if he does. So I'm really just drawn to a king or a queen. I'm not even sure if I'm any good. He may actually have a 10, Not unreasonable for a player like that to have a 10 there. So I think I'll err on the side of caution on that one. I just don't have too much upside unless I go runner for a straight. Once again, I'm asking a lot. Table 3, Rec limps the button. Small blind completes. I'll check in with King 6. Check that flop for the most part, almost probably everything. I think I'll just range check there. That deuce. Maybe if I had some hands that really benefit from betting, like some kind of lower draw, some kind of weak 10 overcard. Range checking there can't be too bad because my so weak. Flop checks around. Turn is the jack, which puts 3 to the straight out there, and I actually have a gut shot now. I'm going to go ahead and stab it. I think that board is just too dynamic, too much going on for a small bet, a min bet to get enough folds. I'm going to use a half pot bet and then plan to barrel off on the river and try to pick this up if I don't get through on the turn. Of course, if I pick up the queen, I'll be betting for value. He goes and raises me. I'm not going to get in too much of a pissing match with the short stack player playing a line like that. Give him credit for thinking they fold, so I'll surrender that one. Interesting over here, we have a limp and then a raise, and now I am on the button with ace jack. I think I can go ahead and go after. We'll make you pop him up to about 12. Oh, we're also deep too, which I think I mean I'm going to go ahead. Too much. I think that's reasonable. I don't even think controversial. Fold out the limper, fold out the ISO, pick it up quick. Pick up a quick 6.5 blind. A fold ace 4 from the small blind. Open. Table 4, I open ace 5 offsuit from the cutoff, get called by the button and the small blind. Small blinds have some limps, probably a weak player. Didn't see it firsthand, but typically that is. I'm going to go ahead and check. This hand really plays a lot better as a check than a bet. I may have some bets here, sandwiched between the two players. But on a board like ace, king, deuce with the weak ace, where I'm probably way ahead or way behind, I don't really see much merit in betting this hand out. I'd rather keep bluffs in. I've got strong aces or kings, or aces, kings. I'm sorry, I'm not going to bet aces, obviously. That's got the board too locked down. I got strong ace, ace deuce, ace king, strong ace X. I got pocket kings, pocket deuces. I will be betting out there. I'm going to go ahead and check call with the ace 5 against that 75% pot stab. Really only worried about a better ace or deuces full. When he goes and checks back the turn, I'm really not giving him credit for either of those hands. Now the decision comes down to, can I get more value by leading with my weak trips and getting him to hero call me, or can I get more value by inducing? I think the betting for value is better. I'm going to go ahead and bet like 2/3. I could have busted Broadway gut shots here that would also bluff, so I think that's pretty legitimate. I'm going to go ahead and bet out. Table 3, opening jack 5 suited from the button. Table 2, get a 3x open from the cutoff. Going to go ahead and 3-bet aces out of the small blind. Table 1, king 4 suited, a little loose even from my looser standard open, but given that it's right on the cusp and I've got some wrecks out there, not much 3-betting, we're going to get in the mix and see if we can't play a flush draw against a fish.
Ooh, we're getting spicy.
Yeah. I mean, my looser strategy open, I've got king 5 suited is the weakest hand that is about 0 EV, solver v solver. And now I get to play a hand against a 64-10 recreational player calling me out of the small blind. So I'm happy to be in that situation. These in position guys haven't been 3-betting me. In fact, none of these guys have 3-bet once at all. This guy over 38 hands, so I'm not going to get punished by that. And this 7-4-3 rainbow board, I think my sort of, as second pairs go, it's strong. I think I benefit more from betting than checking, so I'm going to go ahead and bet half pot on this low board, mostly checking back turns.
Is the half pot an adjustment for being
What's that?
early position open?
Say it again?
Is the half pot C bet an adjustment for being in early position open? Because
It's not positionally oriented. It's texture oriented. From what I've seen, looking at solvers and playing against the solutions in the GTO trainer, you really aren't supposed to use the half pot bet too much on those low boards, like the boards that I classify as 10 high or lower, unless they're paired in single raise pot. But these unpaired single raise pot low boards, or these boards where the real coordinated where straights are possible, you just don't benefit all that much from using the smaller bet. In the texture specific MDA I've looked at to see how the player pool is responding to small bets on these low boards, they're really not getting through often enough, and they're check raising you like crazy. Which probably isn't necessarily bad, because you're really not supposed to, if you're playing theoretically correct, you're not supposed to use small bets on a board like that. So I've been mixing in half pot bets in single raise pots on the low unpaired boards, and in 3-bet pots on low boards, whether they're paired or not. It just seems to be a bit more theoretically correct. If he's got a hand like Jack 10 offsuit, he's probably going to float that against the small bet. I don't even think he's wrong to do so. You really, you can call with all kinds of weird nonsense, gut shots, overcards, everything against that small bet in a board like that. In a board where there are no overcards, it's perhaps a bit different. But I think that's the way to do it there.
Yeah, that makes sense. So when you go half pot, you're not range betting anymore, or are you still?
I'm betting heavily, but I'm splitting like weak pairs with showdown value or strong ace high, the kind of hands I'm checking back first. That sort of second pair is kind of in the middle, but I think I'm just going to benefit more against this guy from getting to fold over cards, or maybe even gives me a half pot bet with random cards. Now, table 4, we squeezed here. I probably should have made it a bit bigger pre-flop. Wasn't thinking right there. But I was going to check this board now that the rec jams for pot, donk jams for pot, and the 2 players on 10-6-5. All I've got is ace-queen high, no draw, no backdoor draw. I'm content to go ahead and fold that. Bad me. I should have popped it up to more like 15. Probably would have folded out at least the pocket 6s, maybe the 7s as well. But against the 12 size, but I think it's a pretty easy continue. Although perhaps it saved me. Maybe the fish was never going anywhere anyway, and he was going to beat me. Table 4, open 9-7 suited, blind down blind. Nothing controversial about that. Flop a flush. Monotone board, I'm going to, especially a low board, I'm going to be checking range out of position just because it's really hard board to be betting. You need to protect your check range a bit more. Obviously, I like that I have a small flush here. I'm just going to go ahead and range check a board like that. He goes ahead and checks back. I'm going to start stabbing at it now. Bet half pot after checking through on the flop.
Is there any merit in overbetting the turn since you've range checked the flop?
Yeah, and I'll definitely do that some, but probably not in a texture like this. Now he goes ahead and raises me. Interesting. I think I'd rather play this in the check line, or the call line, rather than 3-bet him right here. So I'm going to go ahead and call this, be a bit more cautious. I don't think that I'm beat. I just don't want to off anything except strong flushes. Queen 9, he's checking back, and I'm not surprised. I assume he's going to check back. Table 2, going to defend my big blind with pocket 4s against the cutoff open. Table 1, 3-betting Queen 9 suited against the middle position open is probably a little on the loose side. Reasonably close, but I think King 9, Queen 10, 10-9, stuff like that. I think I'm in there. He goes ahead and bets 2/3 or so on the Queen 4-3 two-tone board. I'm going to decide if I really need to be 3-betting or to raising here, rather check raising. I think it's really never too bad to check raise. I'm going to go ahead and put it in. Check raising when you bet a strong hand. I'm going to go ahead and check raise and hope he gets too sticky. That size up should indicate a more polarized range or some more strong hands in there, I would think. Really don't know why he's betting that big on that board. I wouldn't be betting that big on that.
To contrast the statement I made earlier about fish going for 3 streets too much when they use the small bet. It seems like regs go for 3 streets too much when they use the big bet.
Yeah.
I'm actually wondering if that should just be a call on the flop to allow them to continue to barrel.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It very likely could be. The size up to me denotes more strength, which means he's more likely to keep barreling future streets. He folded so quickly, I think he was probably polarized and didn't have much. It's also tricky to find legitimate bluffs on that board without the flush draws. I mean, I can have various straight draws, and especially with backdoor flush draws and stuff like that. You know, I'm not sure on that, honestly. Could go either way. If you're telling me you're calling there for the reasons we're talking about, I certainly don't hate that either. 8-7 kind of on the cusp. I'm going to open it for sake of the video. Squeeze scenario on table 1. I'm definitely going to go ahead and squeeze my king-jack suited, especially against a wreck. He quickly calls. Pulled out the small blind player. I just don't see too much merit in betting this hand because I'm going to fold him off all his error, his bluffs, and I'm really not going to fold him off for an ace or a queen ever. So I'm going to go ahead and just check this one, especially against a wreck. Maybe against a reg, it's not as good a play, but against a fish, I think it's fine. Keep the pot smaller, give him a chance to put money in with hands that have no business being in there and won't call, but might stab. I'm going to go ahead and check call at least once. Get to the turn. He goes ahead and checks back the turn. I think there's no merit in betting. Just go ahead and keep checking. Maybe he stabs with nonsense, or maybe I get a free showdown. I get the free showdown. My hand is good. And that's kind of a deviation there just because my hand was such a textbook example of a hand that plays better in a check line than a bet line, and that there's really no bad cards for it, and I really can't fold out better hands. Plus, I'm against a recreational player who probably has too wide a pre-flop range and might do things he shouldn't do with it post-flop. You know, but he might know to fold 8-7 on the flop if I bet into him. Yeah, he had deuce 4 of hearts, so, you know, I bet that, I don't get that flop bet. And then he doesn't even continue. You know, we get a backdoor flush draw as well, at least on the flop. He did, you know, he picked up a gut shot on the turn. If he wants to be gangster with it, keep barreling now that he's got some equity. Table 3, blind, non-blind. Going to continue with King Jack. I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and 3-bet it, actually. You can call it or 3-bet it. I'm going to go ahead and 3-bet this time. Table 2, got called by the big blind. Going to go ahead and range bet small on ace-5, 3-2 tone. I do have the nut flush draw. So we're probably putting some money in this pot one way or another. Check raises me, but check raises me on the small side. I'm, of course, continuing with the clean draw to the nuts, even for a reasonable size check raise. Table 3, he calls pre-flop. I'm going to go ahead and stab for half pot. I just don't think there's too much merit in playing this hand in a check back line, but I can pick up some equity on various turns. I can go ahead and stab at this. I don't think I get a ton of folds on a board like this, but I get a bit better. Unless he check raises me off it, so I got to go ahead and fold it now. Not a great scenario for me one way or the other. Now he goes ahead and overbets. That's probably reasonably strong up there on table 2. I do have the second pair to go with the flush draw, so I think I've got no choice but to go ahead and continue this. Table 2, or 1 rather, going to open 9-7 suited for middle position. A little loose, but reasonable. I'm going to go ahead and continue floating. I don't pick up any good cards for me on the river. 4-6, in fact, actually got there. One of the most reasonable bluffs that he could have that I was ahead of. I'm content to check this back and try to beat some kind of stupid busted flush draw or nonsensical hand. I doubt I'm ever folding them off better hands by betting here. I think this is a great example of taking my showdown. Against 7-4, so he didn't follow through because he thought his 7 had some showdown value, which it really does not. I understand players thinking that from time to time. Fishy big blind comes along. Going to go ahead and put in the small range bet against him on ace-4. Queen 4 suited is really a little bit looser than I would even open from the cutoff. I'd probably open Queen 5 or better, but I've got a recreational player, and I want to be the one that gets the chance to win his chips first if he's limping under the gun, so go after him I shall. He limp calls, get a Queen 9-3 rainbow board. He checks. I'll go ahead and put in a small range bet. Can pick up some straight draws on a 10 or a jack. Would probably be barreling those, mostly checking back other cards. 6 to puts a backdoor flush draw up there. I don't have too much going on, so I'll check this hand back. Table 2, going to 3-bet out of my big blind with 5-4 suited against the button open. He goes ahead and bets half pot. I like to bluff raise to some extent, but I think that I'm not sure that it's highly profitable here. King X is never folding, 9X is never folding. I don't know that he has enough bluffs. I block some of the bluffs. It's the smaller size from a fish. I'm more inclined to do it if he bets kind of weak. That's the third pot with a 3X type of hand. I can maybe fold him like that. Here I'm gonna chicken out a little bit and not pull the trigger. Over on table two, gonna go ahead and stab for half pot with pretty much all my range on that low paired board, 9-9 deuce. And pick up hands like 3, ace 6 I can barrel on the turn. I'll mostly be check folding if I don't pick it flop. Checked in my Jack 10 against the button limper. Could maybe raise to isolate that, but given that nobody else was in the pot except for the fish, I don't need to isolate him. I get to play against him heads up, so I was content to check. He stabs for half pot. I'll go ahead and check call with my gut shot 2 overcards. Pretty good card for me. The flush closing 9 that makes a straight for me. He bets half pot. I am not going to give him credit for a flush or a full house on that. I'm going to go ahead and raise him with my straight, try to get some value now. He comes along for the call. I'm not going to blow him off the pot with a big scary overbet like I might if I had a full house or a strong flush. I'm going to bet about 75%, give him a chance to calm me down with worse, which he does quickly, and the hand goes in the muck almost as fast as he calls.
What was your
Table 4, I
thought?
stab the turn with my air, then follow through on the river, which is better than checking down 6 high. And he had Queen 8 with the Queen of Clubs. Really not an ideal hand to call down. I guess he does block a flush to some extent, but seems awful marginal to me. But
What was your thoughts on check raising that flop versus calling?
I like calling better than raising there because his flop bet was a pretty decent size. It was pretty close to pot. It wasn't like a min bet or a small bet or anything like that. And none of my draws are real nutted because the board was already paired. So even a non-flush closing 9, I could be against a full house on certain runouts. In the overcards, the pairs are going to play better against a wider range. If I raise that flop, I might narrow his range to, he'll still have a lot of 8x, but he's going to have a lot of trips as well. And I don't have as much equity against the continue range against the check range as I do if I don't raise him off it right there. Plus the turn can go check, and I can just sort of bluff my air against him as well on the river. So I think given that my outs are not nutted, I'm drawing the second best hands. I don't want to narrow his range to be stronger. And also he's using a reasonable size on the flop, which tells me maybe I should be a bit more cautious as well. So I like calling better than raising in that spot.
Makes sense.
Table 2, I 3-bet the button open out of my big blind with ace-5 suitor to go ahead and continuation bet on the 10-8-5 rainbow board. I've got backdoor flush draw to go with it. Now I've picked up the backdoor flush draw, so I've got no choice but to keep barreling this. I'm going to barrel off on blanks as well. Stab for half pot. Going to check back multi-way with the ace-8 on table 1. Going to go ahead and put in a small continuation bet with 9s on the table 4. Everyone sort of is checked around twice on table 1. I'm going to go ahead and start stabbing at that and try to take that pot away. I'm not going to assume my ace-8 high is going to show down good at the river. Do have some equity as well with the overcard, which comes in, so I'm going to go ahead and try to get some value out of this now. Bet about 1%. River, I could still be against, I guess, some better ace-x 2 pairs, some straights, or some sets that have been slow walking me. But I just don't see any merit in checking 2 and deuce or trying to show down for free. I'm going to go ahead and shift the rest in for about 2/3 of pot here with my aces and 5s. I can have busted straight draws, busted flush draws, or I can have some ace-x hands that I'm just going to sort of merge value 1 pair ace-x. If I had ace-jack or ace-queen of diamonds or something like that where I rivered 1 pair as opposed to 2 pair, I'm still going to ship that in just because I think getting him to hero call me is better than checking and trying to decide that he's bluffing enough hands that it makes sense to call down on a board. Table 4, opening queen-jack from the button. Table 1, got a 3x open blind on blind. I'm in the big blind with 6 deuce suited. I think we can go ahead and defend. I don't know. That one's kind of on the cusp. Maybe I'll let that one go. It's not a clear defend, honestly. It's right on the cusp. I'll let that one. Just not that. And I'm against a reg who seems to have good aggressive stats, 30, 27, 10% 3-bet. Table 3, opening King 9 from the cutoff. Table 1, opening 6-5 suited blind on blind. Table 4 is interesting. Get a very large 5.5x open from a player who's been extremely loose passive, 36-4 over 45 hands, using an extremely large size and extremely tight position. I'm going to go ahead and muck my nines. Don't tell anyone you saw me do that. Table 1, going to go ahead and put in a small bet on the ace-9-5 board. I've got a low pair. Now I pick up my backdoor flush draw. I'm not going to go ahead and consider this hand to be good and have showdown value with that lower pair. I'm just going to go ahead and continue treating it like a draw. Stronger draw than a naked flush draw. I'm going to go ahead and use an overbet size here. Get down. Table 1 doesn't look so juicy anymore, so we'll shuffle this one out. I'm up 170 blinds, or I guess I'm up 144 blinds. I think rip mine that one as well as we can. Look for another. Table 2 doesn't look great either. Switching one. Hey, here comes a short stack. Maybe we'll stay on table 1. And he's posting out of position. Will I pick up queens? Let's go ahead and open. Slightly larger for the dead money that's out there, but open up queens. Been sort of tight passive nitty, this player calling a 3.5x open from middle position. That's almost certain some set mine. Line comes along. Dream flop for the queens. Ace, king 2. I'll content to go ahead and check that. Table 3, recreational player limps the button. I'll check in with my flop. There's the turn card I'm looking for. The queen. Going to go ahead and start betting half pot on this board. You know, I like using small sizes multi-way, less so on the turn these days, especially coordinated boards or random hands like pairs with a Jack X or a 10X are very liable to call as well, and the small bet just doesn't accomplish that much. Go ahead and stab that half pot bet. Check called my weak ace on table 3. We'll open kings from middle position on table 2, but check called my weak ace X on table 3. Board pairing card on the turn. If I'm value betting, it's only against a 7x or a 5x he stumbled into. I think this guy's going to have more air he might stab with. I'm going to go ahead and give him a chance to stab air, as hero call me. I'll go ahead and check my ace 3. Table 2, opening 5s under the gun. Nitty player blind on blind, so I'm going to try to rob him with my king 6 up here on table 1. Range bets small. I'm at ace 8 2 on board. The rec goes ahead and bets big. It's a little dicey calling these guys down when they overbet, but board pairing cards. He's got a ton of hands pre-flop. It's a looser formation. I don't love calling the overbet. I've already beat him into the pot if he bets 3 and not 5, but I think it's okay here. And he hit his trips, which is. I got called on the flop on table 1. Turn is a flush closing card. I just don't know there's a ton of merit in betting with the small single heart here. I think I'll just go ahead and check and surrender. Maybe reopen the checks back. He stabs on the small size. I just don't have much going for it. You know, I'm content trying to pick that up on the flop on a board like that. I think going ahead to check fold the turn is reasonable. Unless I somehow get some kind of read that this guy is real floaty. Have that at this point. Nor do I have the equity to back me up if I decide to make it. It's okay to check fold your 0 EV hands. Try to navigate them out of spots where they become. New table 2 looks promising. Some short stack, presumed recreational players in play, which I'm happy to see. One of the other approaches of this strategy, playing more loose aggressive, just trying to get into spots that are neutral at worst, and then assuming I can play better than the pool. It hasn't come up much in this session, in this video, is dealing with 3-bets and 4-bets. In addition to just coming along wide with attacking RFIs or raising first in myself, I'm also calling 3-bets and even 4-bets a lot more than I used to, and just trying to, ride the variance wave and let that all be sorted out post flop. Hasn't happened very much. Part of that's a sign of me being in good games, playing against passive recreational players that aren't 3-betting or 4-betting you very much. Because calling in those spots to defend against 3-bets and 4-bets is good. It's gonna be a little bit better than folding. You're really just mitigating damages at that point. It's just better than folding your money away. It's still not profitable. So I'm happy these guys are not coming after me. I would normally 3-bet here, but this guy's been so tight passive, I think I'm sort of fold the cusp. You haven't got a chance to show that very much, but that's a couple of things to keep in mind. Is that one, that's something else that's going on when you're playing these looser, aggressive, get into neutral spot strategies to try to put other guys to tough decisions. And it's also an indicator that I'm probably in some pretty good games right now, because I'm not even having the chance to defend 3-bets and 4-bets very much, which is obviously always preferable. It's going to be more profitable to pick up the pot pre-flop or go to the flop than have to face a re-raise and sort of put more money in there when they've got the initiative and they've got the stronger hands in their range. Table 4, I open ace-7 suited blind on blind. Big blind calls. I get a 10-6-3 rainbow board. Low board, I'm going to use a half-pot bet. I really think a hand like this, ace-high with some backdoor draws, is going to play better in the bet line than checking and hoping I get through or having to check call or check raise. So I'm going to go ahead and stab for half-pot against this.
It's interesting because I remember watching Educa and them saying, like, don't ever bet ace or king high. Blind versus blind, because you have too much showdown value in a wide formation.
Yeah, I just don't think ace-7 is going to get there often enough. Now, I picked up a gut shot, so I'm going to keep blasting at this guy here. Use a slight overbet because I bet larger on the flop. And river is that 10. It's a flush closing board as well. I think he's going to have a lot of hands that can't stand up to a big bet. I'm going to use, overbetting here feels kind of dicey, too. I'm really not sure what to do in this spot. Spend the 3x open from my big blind on table 1 with 10-8 suited. I can possibly fold out some weaker stuff like 8x, 6x. I'm never folding out a flush or a 10x. I'm going to use the smaller size here and not cost myself too much if I'm blasting into strong hands. Yeah, 10-9 I was never folding, even if I overbet. Kind of a weak third pair against a larger bet from a tight formation. If I had backdoor diamonds, I would call, but here the only card I really love is the 8, as the 10 makes better 2 pairs and straights, and he's sizing up, so I'm going to get out of the way on that one. I'm going to go ahead and limp my small blind with queen 6 suited against an under-the-gun limper.
Have you put any thought into maybe looking for some solves that show flatting ranges for positions we don't traditionally flat from?
Yeah, the solves I'm working off of have flat calls all over the place as well. So, I mean, I could take it a bit further and look at which hands are also positive or neutral EV to play for a call. And in a few spots, I'll do that. I have a general idea of where they are. I usually do it like small blind in a spot where it's a squeeze scenario with a hand I don't want to squeeze, some kind of mid or small pair that I don't want to 3-bet with, but play profitably. So I do have those. I do look at it a little bit. I don't call too much pre-flop. That's a deviation if I do it, but in some cases there's merit. In some cases it's better than folding, and 3-betting is not really a good option. So it exists a little bit. Table 1,
I just think
opens. I 3-bet pocket kings. I get cold flatted by a short stack fishy big blind player, and then this guy, of course, comes along as well. He's going to be checking. He should be checking. His set's even to me. I'm going to go ahead and stab for half pot. Try to get the fish to put his money in and hope this guy doesn't blow me off, having hit trip 7, trip 6s, something like that. Especially that we're deep. Now, he comes along for the call. The 6 is a good card, and I'm really not scared of 2 pairs anymore. It's justifiable to check this one back. If he has some kind of mid pair like 8s through queens, they're going to feel a lot better about the check when I check back as well. I'm just go ahead and keep this pot smaller. River is the 7. I hope he doesn't have 7s or 6s on the flop. Although I have no reason to think this guy has a ton of unpaired 7x or 6x hands. I think I'm going to go ahead and plan to call this or either value bet. That feels like such a blocker bet. I just don't know if the guy is clever enough to do that with 7x or 6x trying to induce me to raise. I think there's actually merit in trying to raise small here to put 8s, for a hand like 8s through jacks, 10s, whatever he might have to actually pay me off and just think I'm full of crap. I'm going to use a small size, put in a small value raise here. And cry if he reships on me. Got the low end of the straight and then bet on table 3. I'll just go ahead. So he didn't get baited by my value raise there, but I think you can find extra value from guys that just don't believe you after they block. A lot of regs will defend their block bets when you raise them. Opening ace queen from the cutoff on table 1, very standard. Going to get a chance to play these 10s down here. Table 3. Now, big blind comes along table 1. I'll go ahead and range bet small on that low paired or mid paired board 9-9-8. Table 3, recreational player limps the cutoff. I'll isolate out on my small blind with pocket 10s. Sizing up for out of position about 150%. Pop it up to about 5.5, 5, 6, anywhere in that range. Probably pretty reasonable. Got a low board against a fish. I'm going to go ahead and start betting out on this for half pot. Not going to be too worried about him having outdrawn me with sets or low 2 pairs, something like that. The hard on the turn I don't love. I think I'm going to be content. Well, do I want to bet this small or check it? That's what I'm really not sure. Get a cutoff open on table 4. Going to go ahead and 3-bet my button with pocket 7s. I think I'll check this. 10s. You could also bet it small, more like half pot. Not a great river, as now you can have all kinds of 2 pairs or just have the 4 straight kind of thing. I think I may just kind of bet half pot to block and try to get called down by some stupid 6x hand or something like that. I can pretty comfortably fold to a raise, especially against a. I am going to go ahead and shut this session down here as I've got to get moving for some plans tonight. But thank you all for joining me. We'll play out the last orbit and see what happens.
I like the value bet with 10s there, by the way. I was muted, but...
Yeah, I'd like it better on a cleaner river, but I don't get to pick the river, of course.
Yeah.
I'm also doing some, I'm probably never betting half pot there, except if I'm trying to take advantage of a perceived fish. I'm not going to bet half pot against a reg there at all. It's the 3-bet with 10-6. That's an easy fold. This guy's been fairly tight. I'm going to try to rob him blind on blind with king 3. That's looser than you should do, but you can start opening all sorts of hands blind on blind. You think you're going to get through an awful lot. I'm going to go ahead and check my weak top pair. Not too many bad cards, at least yet, so I'll go ahead and keep the pot smaller. Double flush draw, some straight draws, open-enders, and gut shots out there. I'm going to go ahead and stab for half pot now. Down. Jack 5 has no... Oh, a new wreck jumping in on table 4. I guess he belongs to some... Give my seat. One last hand on table 3. Pocket kings under the gun. Open those. And get 3-bet by a player sitting 30 blinds deep.
You'll love to see it.
Yeah. Very tough decision he's putting to me here, too, with my pocket kings, Now, I'm probably not going to have a whole lot of calls against this pre-flop because we're so shallow. It's not like I can actually hit flops real hard and outdraw something. So I'm probably just going to play most, if not all, my continuation range while ignoring this guy before that even happened. It's just a jam all in. Probably be as wide as like pocket 10, ace king, maybe ace queen suited, something like that. I guess ace queen's not too bad there. I don't see any merit in having a small 4-bet range, even with this guy out here. I think the only move is just go ahead and reship. I guess with aces, you could consider trapping because it's so protected. But against kings, I definitely want to re-raise. I think a move is just going to be to jam. If this guy's got ace queen, pocket 10, something doesn't buy in, doesn't really give me credit for having beat, he might call off. I think betting small is just too errant, even to a wreck. We're going to ship it in and let God sort him out. Table 2, opening ace-4 suited from middle position. Gets snap called by the 30 blind player. We're getting a decision from the 90 blind player in the small blind. Not much going for ace-4 on table 2, a 10-7-3 two-tone. I guess there's a little bit of backdoor draw on overcard, but not go ahead and bet this multi-way. Some can check back. 2 pick up a gut shot now. Got it in against ace-queen. I'm happy to do that. Even happier when it holds up. One last hand for me. You bust a fish on the way out the door. On table 2, I was going to start stabbing with my kind of weak gut shot and overcard. However, when I get a pretty sizable bet, 5-7 on a coordinated multi-way board, just going to go ahead and fold that. You know, if I happen to have diamonds somehow, I'm of course coming along. I'd probably bet that on the flop. I guess I could maybe continue with some, obviously, pocket 6s. I wouldn't have bet the flop, but would have spiked on the turn, a hand worth continuing. I could have some pair plus gut shot type hands, some 7-8 type stuff that didn't bet the flop that maybe continues, but I'm going to be folding a lot of that board. That's the last hand, so for now we're going to cut the session. Just a brief show of what results were. Here it is for this particular session, up about 270 blinds in actual cash, about 290 blinds in actual expected value. And taking a look at the graph itself, positive red line, positive blue line, positive green line, positive yellow line. Obviously, one session doesn't mean a whole lot, but experimenting with this style in looser games, I'm finding that you can have both positive red and blue lines. You can be winning both non-showdown pots and showdown pots, so that to me seems promising over the, I'll probably put in 40, 50, 60 hours, something like that, playing a style like this in lower stakes games. I'm pretty convinced there's merit to it as long as you understand where the value comes from. Anyway, we're going to cut the video here now. Until next time, this is Charlie Murphy signing off.